Around the World by Leah Bristow and Geraldine Jameson. Globalisation is a radical transformation of the world. It is not a unitary process or force, but rather a set of interrelated changes. Among these are increased international flows of money, goods, people, ideas, information and communication. So globalisation. Within globalisation, we have seen significant movements towards corporatisation in schooling and non-formal education. In the 1980s to 1990s, it was initially carried forward by the rise of managerialism in many Western education systems. Those in authority were encouraged and trained to see themselves as managers and to reframe the problems of education as exercises in delivering the right outcomes. The language and disposition of management also quickly moved into the classroom via initiatives such as the UK National Curriculum. Schools have had to compete for students to sustain and extend their funding, meaning they have had to market their activities and market their own brands. So globalisation in education. The forces associated with such globalisation have conditioned the context in which educators operate, altering people's experience of both formal and informal education. Therefore, schools have become sites of branding and targets of corporate expansion. Globalisation is most apparent in the convergence of education systems around a common international model of policies and practices. This is referred to as isomorphism, with iso meaning same, morph meaning shape. For example, every government educates its citizens through a system of schools organised into classrooms which are led by professional teachers. Mayer et al. States students study a standard curriculum that varies little according to their own national and cultural context. They believe children who become agricultural labourers study fractions, villagers in remote regions learn about chemical reactions, members of marginalised groups who will never see a ballot box study their national constitution. So globalisation is culture. The world culture theory argues that most of the changes associated with globalisation are caused by shifts in underlying cultural values. It includes a belief that individuals have the right to education, that there should be an international spread of music, art, literature and sporting events, and include diversification of religions, cultures and ideas from international migration and the growth of technology and media. The theory argues that cultural changes are consensual, not the result of hegemonic power relationships. International organisations such as UNESCO and the United Nations are agents of globalisation. Through their commitments, they establish and disseminate the values of world culture. This therefore correlates with the spread of schooling throughout the 21st century. So education for girls. Women and girls in the developing world are often denied opportunities for education. They are the first to be excluded, the first to drop out of school and the first to be failed by the system. But World Education believe that education for girls and women is the single most effective way to improve the lives of individual families, as well as to bring economic development to poor communities worldwide. So what are the statistics? There are an estimate of 6.8 billion people living in the world, with 3.4 billion being female. So what are the statistics on girls out of education? There are 31 million females believed to be out of education, with 17 million expected to not attend school at all. 2/3 of the 774 million people who are illiterate are female. Ethiopia has over 1 million girls who do not attend school. Increasingly, Pakistan have over 3 million girls after school, while Nigeria have over 5 million not in school. In sub-Saharan Africa, 28 million girls are out of school. So why are girls out of school? So female genital mutilation is a procedure that intentionally alters or causes injury to the female genital organs for non-medical reasons. 140 million women, girls and babies throughout the world have been genitally mutilated. Another 3 million girls are at risk every year. It is primarily practiced in 28 African countries, some countries in Asia and the Middle East, and as a result of migration in Western host countries. An estimated 137,000 women in the UK have been affected by FGM. However, due to the hidden nature of the crime, this may somewhat be worse. So education in Africa is seen as an essential for an individual to learn self-determination and self-realisation. It is key to learn life skills, including the ability to interpret information and employ knowledge effectively. Education for All is a global action plan adopted in 2000, which provides for all children, particularly girls, to attend and complete elementary school by 2015, by which gender equality is to be achieved throughout the global education sector. However, although the Education for All Global Monitoring Report in 2008 documents progress being made towards this goal, the situation in sub-Saharan Africa remains critical. Of the 72 million children who are unable to attend school, 45% live in this region. Also, only 92 girls start school for every 100 boys. This denies the girls knowledge about health and nutrition, and the information about the risks of the harmful practices are kept from them. So another reason is menstrual shame. 95% of adolescent girls in the mid and western regions suffer restrictions during their periods, meaning staying home from school, whilst a quarter of Indian girls stop attending school when they start menstruating. More than 20% in Sierra Leone and 30% in Nepal and Afghanistan miss school due to their periods. This may be due to only 45% of schools in less developed countries having toilet access. Cultural stigma also affects girls staying at home due to fear of leaks, lack of knowledge and lack of menstrual materials. For example, in Nigeria, the toilet ratio is 1 to every 600 students. So how can education change these factors? If women attend primary school, there would be 15% fewer child deaths and 14% less child marriages. 1.7 million children would not suffer from stunting from malnutrition. On average, in sub-Saharan Africa, those women with a primary education have 5.8 births to those 6.7 births of a non-educated woman. If women attend secondary school, there would be 2/3 less child marriages than that of non-educated women, and child deaths would be cut in half, saving 3 million children. Also, 12 million children would not suffer from stunting from malnutrition, and 60% fewer girls would get pregnant under the age of 17 in South and West Asia. So what initiatives are in place? So there are many initiatives in place from around the world to help get a greater female population in education. CAMFED have an initiative in place called Build Up Girls, as 3 billion girls are held back because of their gender. CAMFED invests in girls in the poorest rural communities in sub-Saharan Africa, where girls face acute disadvantage and where their empowerment is now transforming communities. Since 1993, their innovative education programmes have supported over 1 million students to attend school, and over 3.5 million children have benefited from an improved learning environment. They envision a world in which every child is educated, protected, respected and valued, and grows up to turn the tide of poverty. They also feel that an educated woman would earn 25% more per year in secondary school and invest 90% of her earnings in her family. She would also be 3 times less likely to become HIV positive, more likely to marry later, and have a smaller, healthier family. She will invest in her children's education and support their studies and resist gender-based violence and discrimination, changing her community from within.
Grace became an orphan at the age of 10. She and her 2 siblings were taken in by their aunt, a widow, who worked 16 hours a day to support them. When Grace was 12, she dropped out of school. She married at 15. Today, at 22, she has 5 children and her husband is HIV positive. She works as a domestic servant, earning 50 cents a day. Grace became an orphan at the age of 10. She and her 2 siblings were taken in by their aunt, a widow, who worked 16 hours a day to support them. When Grace was 12, she dropped out of school.
What instrument used to measure?
Then, CAMFED stepped in. Grace was supported for the remainder of her education. She finished at the top of her class and went on to university. Today, at 22, Grace works in a law firm. She's married and has 2 children. Both are in school. When you educate a girl, everything changes. Help put a girl on the path to success. Visit www.camfed.org today.
Another scheme created to help girls is the United Nations Girls Education Initiative. This was launched in 2000 by the UN Secretary General to help governments fulfil their responsibilities towards ensuring gender equality and the right to an education for all children, no matter their gender. They work to improve the quality and the availability of girls' education, promote strategies that put the needs of the most disadvantaged first in education policies, and works to remove barriers to learning such as fees, violence and cultural conflict. Their vision states, a world where all girls and boys are empowered through quality education to realise their full potential and contribute to transforming societies where gender equality becomes a reality.